Welcome to Real Estate AI Flash, the weekly podcast that takes AI from hype to habit, making it approachable and actionable for all real estate professionals. I'm your host, Rajiv Sajja. In this episode, I sit down with Andrew Flachner and Anthony Sosso of RealScout to break down how AI is reshaping not just how real estate works, but how agents and brokerages can win in a rapidly changing market. We go deep on AI-powered home search, what separates shallow consumer search from pro-grade agent workflows, and how tools like RealScout are helping agents deliver smarter, faster, and more personalized results for their clients. Let's get into it with Andrew and Anthony. Welcome to episode 119 of the Real Estate AI Flash. And we got two guests, not one. We usually have one, but we got two rockstar guests. And one of them is Andrew Flachner, RealScout CEO and co-founder, and Anthony Sosso, VP of Engineering, to talk about AI search. There's a lot of conversation about AI search and how RealScout's empowered it. And we're going to dig into all of that today. Andrew and Anthony, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Yeah. So let's kind of dig in. Before we get into the real reason why we're here, I'd love for both of you to take a minute to talk about your background and how you got into real estate and bring us to today.
Sure, I can kick us off. Andrew Flachner, CEO and co-founder of RealScout. Been in this industry for quite some time now. In fact, what most people don't realize is that I got my start selling real estate at a very young age. So started selling homes when I was in high school, believe it or not, and learned how to be a realtor and how to sit open houses. And so I've stood in the shoes of a lot of our customers who do great work for their clients every day, and decided to become an entrepreneur as a real estate agent, and then went on to found a couple of other companies in different verticals, and ended up getting pulled back into real estate. I love real estate. I knew there was a lot of opportunity to amplify the value that agents bring to their transactions and that brokers bring to their agents. And so founded RealScout in 2012.
Yeah, as for me, I joke I've had two jobs. I've managed to be at RealScout for 10 and a half years, though. So I've got my 10,000 hours on MLS data, deep diving. I joined RealScout for its engineering culture. Back in the day, I just believed in the test-driven development, pair programming rigor of it all. And I selected companies I was interviewing at solely based on that criteria. Moved to the Bay Area to work for RealScout, and I'm still here 10 years later, and now in charge of the engineering team and looking to carry those practices and, survive this brave new AI world.
Yeah, and if you're watching us on YouTube, the background of Anthony is a Pittsburgh Penguins goal scoring thing that he just showed me. And he's like a big Pittsburgh Penguins fan. So Sidney Crosby's scoring over who are like 3 or 4 people. So yeah, you're in the same state as I am. So, Philadelphia Flyers are not that good yet. So hopefully they can compete at some point. But good. So one of the areas we're going to get into AI search and take a deep dive there. But I would really like for you both. You've been in the tech space for a long time, prop tech, Andrew, with you, and Anthony's been engineering for a while. And we've had different light bulb moments, right? Everybody's got a light bulb moment. And I think the reason we're all talking about this stuff on a podcast is we've just had way too many light bulb moments with AI. So I'd love for you to tell us, whether it's personal or professional, what was your first oh shit, I think we should care about this moment with AI? Andrew, why don't you go first?
Well, when it comes to AI, I feel like there's been 3 major waves when it comes to how AI empowers us as knowledge workers. And I put real estate agents and even tech founders and engineers in the same bucket. The first was content generation, right? I call it the write for me era. And this is where a lot of people first experienced AI. This was where people were writing listing descriptions and social captions and email drafts. And it made everyone a lot faster, not necessarily a lot better. I think it was low stakes, it was low risk, and in some ways it made some people better copywriters, and frankly, in some ways it made them worse copywriters. You've seen LinkedIn lately, right? Yeah. And then there's phase 2, which is intelligence and AI working itself into common workflows. A good example would be like CRMs and inboxes. It'll summarize your communication. It will suggest follow-ups. And that was moving a little closer to your data and what matters to you. But really, the light bulb moment for me was recently in phase 3, which is like the do it for me era. And this is where, a lot of people have even transitioned from OpenAI into Claude and developing skills in Claude. And it really is something where things are getting real. AI is not just suggesting things, it's actually doing some of the work for you. And it's performing these workflows and it's running searches and it's building outputs. And so the aha moment for me, which is going to sound a little self-serving, is when Anthony here showed us AI search. And when he showed us AI search, it was the ability for an agent to create these really complex searches, which frankly are pretty common in our industry. And it taking seconds, not hours, to pull off one of these searches. I know we'll get more into that in a minute, but it was really, for me, the light bulb moment was seeing how much time we could save our customers, and frankly, how much time we could save ourselves in kind of analogous workflows that we do internally at RealScout.
Yeah. Anthony, you want to go?
Yeah, I would say mine's maybe a bit more comedic in nature. We had, in the early days of ChatGPT, for your famous Thanksgiving discussion, Rajiv, like your first experience with it, we had an internal company Slack channel of people experimenting with ChatGPT in the early days. And infamously, I was the only employee not in that channel. My world, my day-to-day is like deep niche MLS data, Reds feeds, web API, whatever it is. And there was just like, it's not in the training data. They're not going to be able to do it. It's not about like how much I can write in a given day. It's like specifically what single line or handful of lines I need to write. And so I just didn't see the application, but with a couple of model cycles, my teammates are smart. So, they really challenged me to try it out. And Claude Code eventually got so good and, everyone else is kind of caught up, but I've been trying to build deep search for years, comparing list price versus close price and, multiples and payback period on investments and stuff with existing data feeds. And realistically, it was just too arduous to try and do that manually and too complex from a user interface perspective. But as AI got so much better at writing code, Andrew, tastefully and tactfully challenged me to see if an LLM could do it or, do it with voice. And so Andrew's smart. I trust him. I'm in the strong opinions weekly held. And I tried it and there were, kind of an immediate aha moment. And it was like, okay, yeah, we got to pursue this. You'd be kind of a fool not to.
Yeah, strong opinions weekly held. I mean, that is funny because Sosso's putting it lightly. He was the biggest skeptic of AI when this big AI wave was just starting to form. And now he has become not only one of our biggest champions of AI, but also just critical in bringing AI to our customers.
Yeah, no, Andrew, interesting. Two parts I want to kind of comment on. One is you talk about how, we had Brian Boyero recently from 1000 Watt on our podcast, and he talked about how buyers and sellers are using AI today. And I think it's imperative if you're an agent listening to this, you got to empower yourself when you go into a buyer consultation or a listing consultation to actually leverage a tool like RealScout and actually demo it. Like I tell people, look, you can talk about how you can surface listings that otherwise would be hard to find in search. And we're going to get into that a little bit. That I think is a good takeaway. And Anthony, I know there's several ChatGPT moments that have happened. If I look at a timeline, obviously November was like the big one for everybody, November 2022. But then most recently was like software engineering is going through a major upheaval. I feel like December of 2025 was like another ChatGPT moment for software engineering. Because until then, they were very skeptical, but now it's like, holy shit, this is like literally changing what we could do and what we can invent. So I think that's some, and you obviously jumped on the train much earlier because you guys built the product and you actually launched it literally earlier this year. So, and what I did over the weekend with Claude Cowork too is just crazy with skills and stuff like that. So there's a lot there. So let's dig into AI home search. So, obviously there's a lot of conversation about how people are conversing with AI. And we're going to, not just keyword centric, it's conversation centric. And AI home search can mean a lot of things. So why don't we just kind of define what that means? Either way, whoever wants to take that. From traditional bets, bats, and price. And then we'll talk about how you guys start to approach this to empower the agent. What I love about RealScout is it puts the agent at the center of the relationship and adding that value to them so they can pass it on to their clients. So whoever wants to take that, what does AI home search really mean? Sure. And let's dig into how you sort of went into building it.
Yeah, I can take the tip of the iceberg and then Anthony can go much deeper than me on the technical side. But I think that it's common knowledge now that people want to communicate with technology using natural language. And so the portals were actually first to market with this, ChatGPT, Zillow integration, but also Redfin and Homes.com. Everyone has some kind of AI search now. But those search platforms are really designed for shallow intent. And what I mean by that is there are hundreds of millions of people, of unique people searching on Zillow every single month, but there are only a few million home sales every year. And so it's really designed for people to casually search, looky-loos, tire kickers at the very top of the funnel. And so for those searches, usually it's pretty broad. The searches are like, hey, show me homes in Los Angeles under $1 million. And those search tools deliver for that level of query. But people use the MLS or RealScout or these other tools that are deeper in the funnel for a more pro-grade workflow, right? Their clients are looking for a home with a primary bedroom on the first floor, and it needs to be a short distance to retail, and they want a fixer-upper. And those queries are actually really hard to pull off. And if you go to some of those portals and you type in even a medium difficulty search query, like a common example I use is, show me homes in West Hollywood under 1.5 million, but my client's willing to pay up to 2 million in Beverly Hills. That actually won't yield accurate results on some of these portals. And that's a fairly simple query. But for agents who want to go much deeper and deliver this pro-grade experience or pro-grade results to their clients, it requires much deeper MLS infrastructure and a much different system. And so we see AI search as being the umbrella term, which would encapsulate things like portal search, which is shallower intent, and then also workflow tools for agents like RealScout. So that's kind of setting the stage in terms of like what the landscape looks like in our industry. It might be interesting, Anthony, if you want to chime in on kind of how AI search came to be a product at RealScout.
Yeah, like I said, I've been trying to build deep search for a long time. For those who haven't used RealScout before, if your MLS has 7 different bathroom fields for half baths, 3/4 baths, partial bath, you can search on all that in RealScout. Most companies try to protect you from that and keep it sane and just, okay, we're going to do the number of bathrooms and not get into 0.1s and 0.5s and stuff. I live for that. So we wanted to use it. And really, agents are experts, right? And they are smart. And RealScout customers are smart enough to be able to wade into that mess that it can appear to be a mess of data, but it's all there for a reason. It was developed organically within each market. And so, perfect home might actually be fungible, but there are core criteria. And pretty early on with these queries, basically goaded the AI into producing a very complicated query within bounds of that. And we'll get into the fact that we're not using listing data, but you see this monster query that gets spat out and you realize the intellect that's gone into it. And it's looking at, listing date for price fungibility and things that a client could probably never filter on in the first place, but couldn't even make sense of between 2 properties, right? Your perfect property might not be in the cookie cutter beds, baths, price filters that you set up. It might be 200K above, but negotiable down into it. And so, one other thing we saw was that early on, the number of results was very low. And we were like, oh, it's only finding 5 or 6 properties, but they were all perfect fits. I learned a very painful lesson moving to Los Angeles of looking at too many apartments, and literally an hour after I left, they'd already accepted an application. And so sense of urgency and finding the right property, knowing it and being ready to move on it is really critical in certain markets. And so if you can start with 8 of the 10 properties that even consider buying, and then you can relax the criteria and compromise intelligently and argue with data is an extremely powerful use case that I'd really love to dive into.
Yeah, we'll definitely get into it. A fun fact, my daughter just recently moved to Santa Monica, California. So she's living the life, working remotely.
15 minutes from me and probably walking distance from where my mom lives.
Nice. And an hour and a half for me.
There you go. Well, we should definitely hook up if I come see her before she moves back again. But so let's talk through a actual example and how RealScout sort of processes that with MLS data. This is probably going to be as technical as we're going to get. We don't want to lose our people here, but it is important to understand the foundation that you sort of put in place to actually deliver really good AI search. So take an example of a buyer looking for something very unique that an agent wants to kind of make that happen? And how do you process MLS data? And then I have a follow-up question for that. Whoever wants to take that, assuming
Okay,
Anthony
so how
would
about this?
Andrew,
I'm going to take the lead in explaining what it feels like to one of our users. Like, what is the actual product experience? And then Sosso can go deeper in terms of how we quote unquote process MLS data, which we don't. And so we'll talk about some of the nuances there. You know, when you are a real estate professional, you log into RealScout and you complete an AI search. The way it works is you just type in natural language or even speak into your computer saying, my client's looking for a fixer-upper up to $1 million. And they are looking for something that's, on a big lot and has either an ADU or a pool, right? That is something you could type into RealScout, and believe it or not, it will deliver the results. Now, as soon as you hit enter, it's going to parrot back what we think you meant. And that's really important because it's going to, almost like on a ChatGPT interface, it's going to spit out what we thought you said. And that way we can make sure that the assumptions we're making are correct. For instance, in that example I just used, I didn't specify whether I wanted active listings or sold listings. And so we would probably assume in that case that you're looking at active listings, then the listings would populate. But what makes RealScout different is that we will show you our work. And what that means is we will actually show you how we constructed that search query so you can go in and make changes to the assumptions without having to rerun the whole search. Let me give you an example. I said my client was looking for a fixer-upper up to $1 million. But we know, because NAR knows, that as a listing sits on the market for longer, it's more likely that the seller is negotiable on price. And so in that example, we may create a pricing ladder where, hey, your client is looking for a fixer-upper up to $1 million, but if it's been on the market for 60 days, maybe we'll show you homes up to 1.05 or 1.1 million. And then again, if you don't like that assumption, you can go ahead and tweak it. So that's the product experience.
Okay, yeah, we'll keep it simple. So to compute a foldable protein for a pharmacology innovation,
there you go.
Just kidding. Basically, we don't need to look at the listings because we're building a search. What we are effectively saying is that a perfect search would look like this. Basically, give me all the listings that match this complex set of criteria. And so from a logic combining perspective, it gets a little computer sciencey. But give me this and this or this, not this. Whereas every filter that you use in a typical portal or MLS interface is reductive. And in some ways, these are additive and they are more bespoke or kind of vacuum fitted. Mid-century modern may be a style item checkbox in your listing input form, but a listing agent may not select that for valid reasons or just as a data entry error. And there might be other characteristics about the property, maybe underneath that carpet, there's gorgeous hardwood and they entered the listing as modern or farmhouse or something, or, postmodern or whatever. But there are other kind of DNA traits about the property that indicate that it might be a mid-century gem or at least of that era. And so we will define mid-century modern. And it's not that we're defining it. We'll show you what we mean as, okay, we'll also show you post and beam. We'll show you high ceilings, natural light, like the classic, treehouse architecture type things. And if you disagree with any of those filters, you can delete them or refine them. We'll show you properties with a year built in that peak mid-century modern era. We'll search public remarks, any of those things. And so we don't need to look at the listings because we know the entirety of the listing input form, and we're basically constructing a permissive listing input form without ever touching a piece of listing data. So the whole conversation about should we be feeding listing data to AI or not, we feel like we've proved that you don't even need to. So that's like a discussion almost not worth having.
So let me kind of double click on something you said, which is, so if I'm a buyer, let's just kind of walk through this. And my agent sets up a search and I want to look for properties in a certain price range, which is the usual filters, but within a mile of an elementary school. Okay. So let's just, again, I'm going down the conversational search criteria. So you have active listings in your database, you know what they are. So how are you mapping that versus the elementary school? Is there anything in the public remarks? I'm just trying to get to a little bit of the meat on the bone. Is there anything in the public remarks that gives you that, or you're actually mapping distances based on other points of interest that you already have? So walk me through that logic.
Sure. So we are not doing the geospatial proximity stuff yet. Though if you are a savvy customer and you're interested in talking to us about our roadmap, we'll work on it. I think it's more like the rest of the specific criteria, but that's absolutely kind of on the roadmap.
Okay.
Near restaurants or other things, yeah, we sort of have this multi-prong approach to every problem. So like all good engineering, you take a very complex problem and you break it down into the smallest atomic subproblems you can. And so even for something as complex as listing age, we will look at the listing date, the contract date, the days on market, right? There's lots of different, there may be a best one depending on your situation, but we include kind of all of them. Same approach for what it means to be mid-century modern. It's more traits than a specific prescription, I would say.
So on that note, I mean, are you also looking at the imagery of the listing to determine categories, how we want to present it in different type of conversational searches at all?
Not at this point, no. So yeah, no AI. We do have photo tagging in our system, but yeah, not on that front yet. That's absolutely the plan, though, and a very key visual piece of information on the photos. You do have to be a little careful because sometimes listing agents will upload photos of the building, or they'll show pictures of the Hollywood sign on a listing in Los Angeles. So lots of gotchas. Is that pool a community pool or property of the listing? So on and so forth.
Yeah, let me ask Andrew. Let me pivot to you. Obviously, you guys have produced a really quality tool for agents. A lot of brokerages. The number one tool people I talk to, they love RealScout. And so I feel like there's two categories of agents that have emerged. One is the AI fluent agent that walks into a listing appointment or a buyer consult. If they're all in on RealScout, from an agent perspective, what are 3 to 4 ways they can actually demonstrate that and you guys make it easy for them to kind of win that buyer and kind of take them through a transaction? Just kind of talk through some typical use cases you're hearing.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that for a lot of agents in the industry, what they do is their client is out there searching on Zillow or Redfin. They're having a great experience. And as soon as they connect with an agent, the agent will then downgrade their experience from a portal experience to an MLS experience. And, the MLS is a really powerful pro grade tool, but it doesn't have a compelling consumer interface. And so from the very beginning, we focused on creating something that was as compelling as the portals for consumers, but as robust as the MLS for a real estate agent. And so when an agent meets with a client, oftentimes what they'll say is like, hey, you've been enjoying searching on Zillow, for instance, and I have a tool that is as user-friendly, but it also allows me to collaborate with you. It allows me to understand your search behavior and be a mind reader so that I can be a better agent. I can intuit your needs and your next steps. So that is a big part of the value prop, right? And that only exists if we have that really robust pro-grade experience, which is where AI search folds into. So that's a big one. I think there are some bells and whistles on the consumer side that they really like. The first and foremost one being that they have one-click access to their agent, but also things like compare, which I know you're familiar with, Rajiv, but that's where you can take 2 or 3 listings side by side and compare the kitchen photos automatically with other kitchen photos of other properties, bedrooms, living rooms, etc. So that is using machine learning, a form of AI, to create that experience. So those are a couple of the big ones, but I think that for agents looking to wow their clients, it actually extends beyond just home buyers and it goes into home sellers. So we have, home value alert experience where an agent can keep their client up to date on their home's value and how that's changing over time and recent comps. And we even include the Zestimate in that home value alert. You've probably seen a lot of noise recently around home buyer demand, which is something we were first to introduce to the market many years ago. Now, Compass, for instance, is revealing all the buyer demand of its consumers, but that's only the consumers that are using a Compass agent. And for us, we wanted to be brokerage agnostic. And so in any given market, there could be like a Home Services of America company and a Keller Williams and a Remax all using RealScout. We will reveal all that buyer demand data. And what that allows for is the listing agent to show up to a listing appointment and have a different level of sophistication because they're not just looking at the comps. They're actually able to see how many buyers are looking for a home just like this right now. How many more buyers would we get if we lower the list price by 5%? And who are the agents out there that I can reach out to who have matching buyers for my listing? And so that becomes a really powerful and compelling value prop, where if you are showing up to a listing appointment, now you have an edge. You have a way to win that listing over your competition.
I'm so glad that you brought up the buyer demand report, because when I was at Fox Roach, we used to drill that into agents. And I have a very fun story for you. I don't know if I shared this with you, Andrew, that this agent took, she had a listing that sold. And so she did a radius search of properties, people that have been in their house for over 10 years. And she built a custom, she did this one at a time, because you can't do it multiple, like it's not one to many, one to one. So she did 60 buyer demand reports. She printed it out and mailed that instead of a just listed or a just sold postcard. And she got a call from one of the clients. And when she walked into the appointment, the buyer demand report was on a dining table. And my question really is, for agents listening to this, when was the last time you saw a just sold postcard on a dining table? So you got to kind of think outside the box. And I appreciate you guys empowering agents to build solutions like that, leverage solutions like that. And that had nothing to do with AI. The main topic of conversation is just really intelligent matching. So that's a great tool. I love that tool. And I'm glad you brought that up as key things you can leverage. So let me move to Anthony and kind of touch on a little bit about, I know you guys aggregate, when I was at Fox Roach, there were 8 MLSs. You guys aggregate, like there's so many MLSs. That's a whole other topic. We just have one too many MLSs in the country. But how do you think about MLS data structure, remarks, and metadata, and all of the things that goes into aggregating this? And how does it influence anything? I know you talked about how you separated it, but talk a little bit about how you sort of manage that data that powers your AI search and make it better.
Yeah, a whole team of people and processes to track it, so that when your MLS gets a new subdivision added to it, that you see that on RealScout as quickly as possible. A lot of other companies just kind of feed it all into a sausage grinder, and they give you the same 10, 20 filters between it. But if it's in your MLS and it's in your data feed as it's in your MLS, which is a battle I fight regularly, it's not always the case that way. You should expect to see it on RealScout. I think that's just to adoption. I think it's why our adoption is as strong as it is. Agents understand they're already experts in real estate. They're already experts in their MLS, and you should be rewarded for that. The goal is to just give them kind of a super suit, a mechanical suit that makes them, turbocharged on RealScout. And maybe even learn some fields that you didn't know were in your MLS. You can just chat with AI search and say, hey, how many bathroom related fields are there in my MLS? Or if you're a brokerage onboarding a new agent in an MLS that either relocated or just got their license, you can kind of show them the ropes of the MLS with AI search. It's a really great way to play around with it. It's another cool use case.
Yeah, for sure. Andrew, you want to add a comment?
I think Sosso covered it.
All right. Yeah, efforts are boosting data quality across the industry. And I think the MLSs that are like natively embracing data quality and being stewards of it and not being disintermediated is a cause we've been fighting for since 2018. I think Bright does a great job of that, of being where the buck stops with data quality. Because when you have a data feed that is different on your site versus what you're forcing vendors to consume, you're just not really serving your brokerage community that well. So yeah, hats off to all the MLSs that are doing that. And I know tech teams are short staffed and you don't always understand the full picture, but that to me, that's the tide that raises all ships, I would say. So we'll get better with that, but the reality is the data landscape is pretty fragmented, and so we've had to fully embrace it, and we're here for it either way. Yeah.
Let's kind of look ahead a little bit. Maybe I'll start with you, Andrew, as we're starting to wind down here. We're talking about AI search now. What capabilities, I know Anthony mentioned a few things in the roadmap. What capabilities do you see coming next in the AI-driven home buying or selling experience that RealScout is thinking about?
Yeah, so a big one for us is understanding the contents of photos and doing that in a responsible way that delivers the results that people would expect. Some of the geospatial querying is also top of mind for us. And then multi-turn, right? Currently with AI search, at least a pro-grade tool like RealScout, you query and you get results. And then if you want to make adjustments, you can do that using the drop-downs and criteria, but it isn't fast to have a back and forth conversation with AI search. And that's something that, is something that we're excited about exploring. That will unlock quite a lot when it comes to workflow, right? You can imagine a world where when you're communicating with AI search, you're actually not communicating with AI search, you're communicating with your RealScout AI assistant, and it will be able to kick off additional workflows and enable additional functionality in RealScout or perhaps other integrated tools, right? So that's a big topic of conversation right now. Is it's great that I can have a conversation with Claude or ChatGPT, but how can that kick off workflows in other adjacent tools that I have access to?
Yeah. Anthony, anything you want to add there?
Yeah, I'd say the geospatial stuff for sure. And, if you have different commute tolerances between partners, one partner that can sit in the car, one that likes to listen to AI real estate podcasts and doesn't mind driving for hours at a time, computing the boundaries of those and finding properties that live in the overlap of it and allowing for school drop-offs and stuff would be very neat. I think the agentic proactive, hey, you're sending this wide open alert agent, it's actively pushing your client away from you. Stop sending them properties that are in, filter sets that they don't want to see, or they've explicitly said they don't want to see these anymore. And if you don't have the advanced logic that we do, you can't carve out specific sets of properties that are driving your client away from you. Those are two really, really big ones that I'm passionate about getting solved.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think we're all on a journey. I mean, Andrew, you touched on this before with your analogy about where AI started, where was your light bulb moment. Like, I look at it like done by you, which is where everybody starts. Go to ChatGPT, Claude to do something, and then done with you. It does some of it, but you still have to look at it, and then it's done for you. Like where agentic AI is sort of going, and more we can kind of predict behavior and do things and prop stuff up for agents to chime in. I think that's where you guys are going. So this is good stuff. So I could talk to both of you for hours, but we do have a podcast that we need to end. So I'd love to get some closing thoughts from both of you. I mean, Andrew, you've been a real estate agent from high school, and then you became prop. When did you start RealScout?
2012. So it's been about 15 years.
Oh, wow. Okay. So if you could take it either way. If you were starting in real estate as an agent, since you've done that, or prop tech leader today, what advice would you give your younger self?
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing that has worked really well for us is laser focus. It's just so common in this industry to build a company that does 30 things and does none of those things quite well. It's becoming easier to build software now, so I think that temptation is even stronger to go and try to build. You see brokerages starting to do this. I can't believe it's another wave of this, where brokerages are saying, "Hey, we're going to build everything for our agents instead of partnering with vendors who have focus." Pretty wild to see. I think that one lesson that I learned is that building the right tool is hard, but what's even harder is distribution in our industry. It's brutal, right? Getting into agent workflows, getting into team workflows, getting the adoption, it's tough. Brokerages move slowly, agents move slowly too, and ultimately it's your biggest risk probably as an entrepreneur is irrelevance due to a lack of distribution as opposed to competition, right? I think we overestimated the ability for our competitors to catch up with us or to care, right? I mean, there's a lot of companies in our space who are much larger than us, who have bigger engineering teams, who are well capitalized, and most of them just they have enough on their plates. Like, they're not looking to compete directly with RealScout, or they underestimate how difficult it is to pull it off.
Yeah. How about you, Anthony?
I don't know that I'd change a thing. Trust your gut, follow your passions, go deep on the technologies that matter, ask if you're doing what's important to the business. Mistakes are how we learn. You got to be smart about where you try new tech. Don't roll things out to your core business line, but strong opinions weakly held.
Yeah, I like that. Strong opinions weakly held. So, I don't know if you're a book or a podcast person. Let me start with Andrew.
Lately I've become a podcast person because
I call out Andrew's podcast. He's got an amazing podcast. We'll put a link to all of this stuff in the show notes.
So my podcast, shameless plug, but my podcast is Playmakers, available on all podcast platforms. And, that's with interviews with the biggest playmakers in the industry. There's actually one that's coming out soon. I think that people on this call are really going to enjoy. Other podcasts that I listen to, I mean, I will say that I'm not usually a book person, but one of my recent podcast guests was Sahil Bloom, who wrote The 5 Types of Wealth. This has become a New York Times bestseller, but it talks about I mean, the message itself you probably heard before, which is wealth can be measured in a lot of different ways. But Sahil Bloom talks about it in a way that was really impactful in my life. And he talks about time wealth, which is being able to spend time on the things that matter most to you, social wealth, mental wealth, physical wealth, and of course, financial wealth. But this is a book that has been lauded by Tim Cook and Bill Ackman and Gary Vee, and highly recommend reading the book or checking out my interview with Sahil on the Playmakers podcast.
That's great. Great plug in. You kind of weaved in both, like a book and a podcast and your podcast. That's good stuff there, Andrew. Anthony, how about you, Anthony?
I'm going to go a little different. 32 Yolks is the early life memoir by Chef Eric Ripert from Le Bernardin in New York, a 3 Michelin star restaurant, best restaurant in the world, depending on which list you look at. I just think with everything else going on in the media right now about restaurants and how difficult it can be for employees and toxic at times, we're engineers, right? So we look for counterexamples to prove that things don't need to be a certain way. Le Bernardin, by all measures and public accounts, there is like a spotless reputation beyond reproach, open kitchen, everyone gets to learn everything. So to be the best in the world at what you do, and to also be a good person, and this question of tolerating atrocities versus the art and the artist and all that, it doesn't have to be that way. And so I think we shouldn't tolerate it. It's amazing what he went through in his life, the cycle that he broke. And the book ends before the wildest part of his life even begins. 32 Yolks, quick read, fantastic. Eric Ripert, excellent.
We'll put a link to all of that in the show notes. Gentlemen, Andrew and Anthony, thank you. Keep up your good work at RealScout. And I'm sure we'll bump into each other soon at an industry conference to talk more shop. So thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Rajiv.
Thank you.
If you found value in the show, follow it so you're notified every Wednesday when new episodes drop. Share it with someone in the industry you care for, and leave us a review as it helps us reach more real estate professionals like you.